Hi, I'm Mal from the Money Study, bringing you another episode in You and Your Superannuation. Number 2 in the series, and this is all about non-concessional contributions. Sounds complicated, but basically what we're trying to do, we're just trying to get some money into your super fund. Before we kick off with the details, there's my disclaimer, all about facts and figures. It's information only. This is not advice in today's session. So there are two ways that we can get money into super, as a concessional contribution and a non-concessional contribution. And there's a few others, but these are the basic ones. And effectively, I'm going to start with non-concessional first, because these are probably just the simplest to understand. A non-concessional contribution is simply an after-tax contribution. It's a personal contribution from you, which has come from money that has already been taxed. It's money that's come from a bank account. It might have been money that you got paid, gone into the bank account, and then you've decided, yep, I want that into my super fund. It could be coming from any source that literally has indeed been taxed. So it could be the sale of an investment property. It doesn't matter where the money came from. It's just the fact you want that money into your super. You could do it as a regular payment. You might be able to set up a BPay with your super fund, and every fortnight they just pull money out of your bank account and it goes into your super fund. You might even be able to send them a cheque if anyone's got a chequebook these days. But you can do these at any time you like. You could basically, do one every fortnight. You could do, some money in March and then dropping more money in October, and so it goes on. There's no sort of time frame. You don't have to do it regularly. You can do it as a dollar amount. So you can just say, okay, I'm going to put in $7,000 or whatever the case may be. Or you can indeed still get your employer to make a non-concessional contribution. Most people think that employers only do salary sacrifice, but this is, which we'll talk about in a future session. But with a non-concessional, you can still just ask your employer, can you just plonk some money into my super fund for me? No tax is paid on this. And meaning that if you pull out $100,000 out of your bank account and you put that into your super, $100,000 will indeed land into your super. Now, this is not the same when we start talking about concessional contributions, but for these type of contributions, after-tax contributions, you've already paid tax on it, so there's no extra tax to then put it into the super fund. So whatever leaves your bank account effectively lands into the bank account. So no tax is paid, but also you don't get a tax deduction for doing it. And so people say, well, if there's no tax benefit, why am I doing it? Well, from episode number 1, the reason we're doing it is effectively to get our investment only to be taxed at 15% rather than getting taxed at perhaps a higher level. And for convenience, and for some people, possibly preservation, so they don't dip into it. So the reasons why we want to do it, and these reasons will also be varied from person to person, but so far, with what we're doing here is just plonking some money into super. What are we restricted to? As a non-concessional contribution, the current cap is $110,000 a year. $110,000 a year. It's actually, they come up with that number. It's 4 times the concessional. When we talk about the concessional, you'll find out that one is capped at $27,500. So 4 times 27.5 means the non-concessional is 110. So you can put $110,000 into your super fund every single year. Remembering, of course, that super is an individual thing. So if you've got a partner, yep, they could put in $110,000 into their super fund. You can put $110,000 into yours. So as a couple, $220,000 could indeed go into super. Now, there is not only an annual cap, there is also this effective, like a lifetime cap. That once you get your total super balance across all your super accounts and so forth up to $1.9 million, you are not allowed to make non-concessional contributions ever again. So once you get your super balance up to 1.9, then you can't contribute after tax any longer. You can do pre-tax, which we'll talk about, but not an after-tax contribution. If you do, they will basically send you a letter from the ATO saying, what are you going to do about this? Are you going to pull it back out again? Which they'll let you do, and they'll notify the super fund to release the funds back to you. Or they will indeed tax you at the highest marginal tax rate on any excess over the cap. And it's taxed at the highest marginal tax rate. So if you'd be losing nearly half of what you put in tax if you go over this limit. Now, some people, you've heard about people with, $5 million or $10 million in their super. They got it in there before these rules came into being. So, this is a rule that is now putting a bit of a dampener on your super. Mind you, if you've got $1.9 million in super, not a bad situation to be in. There is, however, an ability to put in more than $110,000 in 1 year. You can actually use what's called the 3-year rule. And what we're doing here is we're borrowing the cap from the next 2 years. So therefore, we've got 110,000 from this year. The cap for next year is 110. The year after, that's 110. So we're going to use that bring forward rule to literally put in $330,000 all in the 1 year. And you're certainly allowed to do that. But if you did do $330,000 in 1 year, you can't contribute for the next 2 after tax, literally because you've already used up the cap. Now, of course, if you put in $200,000 in year 1, you've still got $130,000 that you could do in years 2 and 3. But you just simply can't go over the $330,000 total as a non-concessional contribution over that 3-year period. Now, so that gives us a fair bit of flexibility. And again, your partner, if you've got a partner, they've got this bring forward rule. So in theory, the two of you could actually get $660,000 into super. And of course, we're talking in financial years here. So in theory, you could both put in $110,000 into super on the, say, 25th of June, just before the end of the financial year. You tick over into the 1st of July, then use the 3-year rule, meaning you could put in $330,000 each on the 1st of July after already doing $110 the week before in the previous financial year. Between the two of you, you could indeed get $880,000 into super in effectively a fortnight, and then still put more in when we start talking about concessional contributions. So it's if we use the rules correctly there, we've got a fair bit of opportunity to get the money in. And especially as we've got time in most cases to get it in the regard that since July 1, 2022, you are indeed now allowed to contribute after tax to a super fund. You can contribute after tax a non-concessional contribution to a super fund up until the age of 75. So 74, well, it's 74, 11 months and 3 weeks and whatever. As long as you're under 75, you can indeed contribute to a super fund whether you're working or not. There's no works test. You could literally been retired for 10 years and still get this money into super. So if a windfall comes your way, an inheritance or something like that, and you've already retired, you're 69, and you go, gosh, I wouldn't mind that money into a super account because of the tax benefits, then nothing's stopping you from getting that in, so long as it's underneath the annual and the overall cap for that situation. Now, of course, if you get it up to $1.9 million, and then we have a bit of a drama with your investment, that you've got it, quite aggressively invested perhaps. The share market falls, you lose some money out of your super, then if it drops down below the 1.9, then you can indeed recommence those non-concessional contributions in the following year to effectively get it back up again. This cap is only taken as of the 30th of June. Cap's taken as of the 30th of June, so even if you were 1.899 mil as of the 30th of June, then indeed you could indeed still contribute into the following year, even and up to the 110, because you didn't exceed it as of the 30th of June. You wouldn't be able to use a bring forward rule, but you could certainly contribute into that next year, even you knew a fortnight later you'd be over the cap, because it's only if the cap is, if you exceeded the cap as of the 30th of June, can you no longer then contribute into the following year there. So we'll be talking about a little more of this as we continue on with the sessions, and bit by bit, these things will become second nature to you, I hope. Superannuation, of course, is buried in jargon. It certainly sounds more complicated than it is, but effectively from this episode, as long as you can understand, we can get some money out of a bank account into super within restrictions, and it could indeed be beneficial to you. If you ever want to sit down and talk to someone about before you do it, just to make sure you're not going to get your hand smacked, then please book an appointment with us and we'll help you out. Talk to you on another episode.